get this moving. All right, so as the robot lady just said, we're recording now, and we're talking about Gmail and how to make it work for you instead of you breaking your back to make it work. So work smarter, not harder. So what that includes today is using the schedule send function, so you can plan your emails in advance. We're also talking about the different inbox types that you can use to display your emails in different ways. We're also going to talk about labels and how to make those and apply them to emails, and then filters as well, how to create filters for incoming mail and just kind of pre-organizing anything that comes into your inbox. So with all that being said, let's hop over to an actual email inbox. So if you are comfortable with working along in your own inbox, that's totally cool. If you just want to watch what I'm doing, of course, that is always fine. This will be recorded, so I'll send it out later today, so you can always work with it side by side with the recording and then do it on your inbox. So whatever you feel like doing. But first things first, you're going to have to sign into your Google email. You're probably in there now, but if you're not, sign in with your full Marywood email, and then you'll get to your inbox just like you see here. So the first thing we're going to talk about is the schedule send function, which is actually right within the compose window when you start to write a new email. So when you open up the compose menu, you have your typical fields. So you can put in your recipients here. You could do your CC, BCC, whatever you want to do. You put in your subject, whatever it may be. And then whatever your body text is, whatever you feel like entering, if it's an email out to MW admin or all the faculty or all the students, whatever it is, it really doesn't matter. The only part that is important for you to remember if you want to use schedule send is actually using it, because it's hidden right next to the send button right here on the right. And I don't know if I can zoom in on that. Okay, it's a bit bigger. So it's right here on the right side of the send button. And it's the only option you have here. So instead of clicking send to send the email immediately, we can schedule it instead. So when you open up the schedule send menu, you have a couple options just by default. They always include tomorrow morning, and they'll tell you when that is. So 8 o'clock the next day, this afternoon, so 1 o'clock this afternoon, or Monday morning. No matter what day of the week you're doing it, they'll always include Monday morning. And then you could also include your own date and time. So if you were to click on pick a date and time, you get this little calendar picker. So you can schedule it for as far in advance as you would like. So maybe I'll say something like November 19th. And then you can also put in your time down to the minute. So if you really want to send it out at 11:07, just to make it look really, personalized, like it's not exactly at 8 a.m., you can totally do that. And once you click schedule send, it puts the email directly in the scheduled menu. So I'm going to open up my menu here so you can see the words. So with this background, it is a little difficult. But you can see there is a scheduled label, just like your sent mail is here as well, and your drafts. You also have scheduled when you make a scheduled email. So it sits in this area before it actually sends out. So if you realize that you made a mistake or you want to review that email before you send it out officially, you can always come in here to the scheduled area, and it shows you all of the emails you have scheduled and what date they have. And if you are on the date that the email is going to send out, it'll tell you what time it's sending. So if I set one for today at 1 p.m., it would have 1 o'clock p.m. over here on the right. So you can click on any of your emails that you've scheduled to open them up. You can cancel the send, which then opens it up again as a draft. So you can edit the text, you can reschedule it for a different date or the same date. But the important thing is that you can actually change this whenever you want up until the date it sends out. So if I click cancel send, it reverts it to a draft as it mentions down here. And then it's open again in the bottom right in the compose menu. So you can add your text. And then you can reschedule it just by clicking on that arrow again and clicking schedule send. So it's just the same thing, except this time, if you revert it to a draft, it gives you the last scheduled time. So you can just reschedule it for that exact same time that you had before, or you could pick a brand new one. Completely up to you. Are there any questions about that so far?
No.
Okay. That one's pretty easy. Honestly, all of them are kind of easy today, but this one is probably the easiest one to adopt rather. I definitely use it for when I'm sending out listserv emails because I can take as long as I want writing them, but maybe I want it to send out tomorrow at 8 a.m. and I start at 8:30. So it looks like I'm starting work really early, but I'm actually not. So it really just gives the illusion of productivity, I guess. But if we have no questions about schedule send, I think the next thing to talk about would be inbox types. So I'm going to scroll out a little bit for this one just so we're not so compact, but I will zoom back in as soon as things get a little small again. So inbox types refer to the organization of the inbox that you're looking at. So a default one is exactly like you see here. It's just all of your emails as they come in. The unread ones are bolded, but they're not stuck to the top. They're unread as they come in. That's pretty much it. Some other ones include the one I have on my personal Marywood Gmail, which is these categories that you can add. And each category includes different respondents or recipients rather. So for my primary one, that's pretty much anyone from Marywood sending out an email. In social, any of the things coming to my work Twitter. In promotions, it's sometimes shops like the Marywood bookstore or something like ModCloth, or it's information about conferences coming up or different webinars that I could attend. And updates is a mix of webinar information as well as like insurance stuff and also Google updates. So this one, for example, is something that was shared with me through Google and it comes to my updates. So it kind of organizes everything in a way that I like, but there are many different inbox types that you may find one that works for you. So to change your inbox type, it's pretty simple. They've made it a lot more accessible in this new Gmail update. If you click on your settings gear up in the top right, you'll see the quick settings pane, which is new. You can see all settings if you click on this button at the top, but actually the inbox types are just a little bit down if you scroll. So you don't have to go too far. You don't have to click around. It's just right down, right past the halfway point. So your inbox type, if you have not changed it, is probably default. And you can choose the radio button to the left of any of these to automatically change them. And if you don't like one, you can always change it back. It really isn't too hard to finesse with these. So the default is just as you see here, as we discussed. Also, the categories that I mentioned in my Kowaleski email are also default, but you just customize them and add tabs, which I will show you in a couple minutes. Some of the simpler ones include important first, which puts all of your important emails marked with this little yellow tag all at the top. So you can see there's a little header here. And then everything else is here at the bottom. Because I don't have everything else, like I just have all these important emails, it's kind of blank down there, but all my important ones marked with this yellow tag are at the top. For unread first, it just puts any unread emails at the top and everything else at the bottom. So I'll put one of my emails up there. You can also use these little headers to collapse the emails if you don't feel like looking at them right now, or you can expand it to see everything again. We also have starred first, which puts anything with a star on it at the top, and everything else is below, even if it's unread emails. So those are pretty simple. They kind of indicate what they do. The next one that is pretty useful if you really want to dig down deep and categorize your inbox is priority inbox. And this one has 3 different sections. So we have important and unread. So anything that's important and unread at the same time goes up there. Anything starred goes in the second one, and then everything else goes in the third. So it's kind of super specific, and you can actually change these different sections to things that are actually applicable to you and how you use Gmail. You can also add a 4th section as well, so if you want to get super crazy, you can do that too. And just to add those new sections or change them around, you click on the Customize command right under Priority Inbox, and it opens up the settings page for the inbox type. And if you've used your Gmail settings before, this is the same page that you get to when you click on the settings page and then see all settings. You usually get to this general tab first, but inbox is here as well. And if you select priority inbox, you'll see this area called inbox sections. So we have 3 that are active right now. As we saw, it was important and unread. starred, and everything else. We have an empty one, so we could add another section, and that could be anything like just important ones or just unread. We can also include any labels that we have. So if you are really good with labels, you love using them, you can include a label as one of your sections in your priority inbox. So we'll talk about filters later, but if you had a filter that put a certain like emails from a certain person into a certain label, you can have that label show as one of your sections, so you always see that label on your inbox home screen. That's just an option, but it is pretty cool. You can have it set up so that you look at either the entire workshops label as I have it, or if you wanted to do one of the children labels, the sub-labels, you can do that as well. You can also remove the section if you don't want it. If you don't want 4 sections, that's pretty cool. You can just remove them by clicking on the drop-down where it says options and just clicking remove section, which is all the way at the bottom. The only thing you can't remove is the everything else, because then you wouldn't be able to see your emails. So you can hide that when it's empty. So if you have no other emails in your inbox because you've read them or organized them already, you can hide it when it's empty so it doesn't appear, but you can't actually get rid of it because you need it in case there's emails outstanding that you haven't organized yet. You'll also notice that when you click on this options or even add section menu, you will see that you can add up to 50 items. You can see up to 50 emails in a certain section and as little as 5. So it's really up to how much you want to see at once, how much you're comfortable seeing. And of course, if you're playing around with it and you're like, oh, I don't like what I just set up, I like the original, you can always click reset to default configuration and it changes it to that initial 3 sections. Are there any questions about priority inbox so far? All right. Now, as promised, I will go over the categories for inboxes, and that is in the default inbox type. So I'm going to click back on my settings pane over here, scroll down to inbox type and select default. Now, it kind of put it in for me already, these little categories. So if you notice that you're playing around with these other types and you go back to your default and you don't want the categories, you still have to click on customize to get rid of them. So we're going to click on default and click on customize. And then you'll see here we can select which tabs we want to enable. So the one that's always enabled is primary because that essentially serves as your basic inbox. So if we unchecked both of these, it would just be your normal inbox again. But on my Kowaleski email, I have social, promotions, and updates all enabled. And for some reason, I just don't want forums. Because when you hover over each of these sections, it tells you what examples, based on what emails you get, what kind of emails will go in each of these categories. So for the social one, I'll get things from Adobe and from Trello. For promotions, I'll get things from like Kat Fisney and Christina Clark, things like that. For updates, I might get them from different people. In the workshops account, it isn't really that interesting because I don't use it that much to organize, so it doesn't really know where everything should fit. Whereas if I go over to my Kowaleski email and I go over to customize my default tabs again, my social includes Twitter and YouTube, which makes sense because they're social media. Promotions includes the people from Bright Talk and SolarWinds, so those are like webinars and things like that. Updates include OLC, which is a conferencing thing. We have our insurance for Delta Dental, things like that. So this is more specific. And if I hover over forums, it'll be, I'm pretty sure it refers to listserv emails. So anything about notices, MW admin, things like that will go into forums. And I didn't really want to enable that because I do like to at least read the subjects for those. So I want them to go to my primary so I get an idea of what's going on. Especially with yesterday when we had a network outage, it's important to know those things immediately. So I didn't want to hide it in a different category. But if you want it, you're more than welcome to check it, and it'll include itself in the inbox categories here. You also get the option to include your starred messages in primary. So if you star an email that is in one of these other tabs, it'll also appear in the primary tab. So that is why something like this Bongo support email is also in primary, because initially it went to updates, I think, but I starred it so that I could see it in primary. The other cool thing about these categories is that it's naturally a Google product, so Google learns whether we like it or not. So if you wanted to include anything from notices in your promotions for some reason, you can click and drag this email to the promotions area, and then Google's like, oh, okay, so she wants anything that's labeled like notices or from Michael to go right into promotions. So you kind of have to teach it sometimes, but if you use your email enough, Google kind of learns what's important to you and what's not. Which also reminds me, on Monday, I spoke to the attendees about what actually is counted as important in Google email. And anything that's marked with this yellow tab is important, but maybe it's not important to you. Google just assumes that things are important sometimes. So if you ever see an email that is marked important and you don't think it actually is, definitely unmark it, because then Google understands, oh, okay, so maybe these emails aren't important anymore. And that's especially useful if you're using the inbox types that use important as a marker to kind of distinguish the emails. It's important that you kind of teach Google. Otherwise, it doesn't really matter. Same goes for if you want something to be marked important, you should definitely do so just so Google knows in the future what you consider an important email. So it's kind of, we're teaching it as we go, even though it's definitely smarter than most of us. So are there any questions about all of that inbox jargon? Okie dokie. So next things next, we're going to talk about labels. So labels, if you haven't used them yet, are all of these fun little folders on the left side of your inbox. So I have a bunch and they're all color-coded because it helps me. And also, I use my inbox with the collapsed menu so I can still see the colors. And I kind of coordinated the colors to the colors of each app's logo, so I kind of know what each one is. I'm weird, but if you have it expanded, you can see the text of all your labels and the colors, and you can also edit them, so it's kind of cool. There are two ways to actually create a label. You can click on the More area down here. I'm going to scroll in a little bit. There's More right here, and if you click on that, you just have to scroll down a little bit more all the way to the end, and you can create a new label right from here. So you just click Create New Label, and you can type in whatever you want it to be. For me, it tends to be different applications because I answer questions on a lot of them, and if something is particularly helpful, I like to organize it into a label so I have it for later. So in this case, because Apps Anywhere is an application all by itself, it's going to be a parent label. But if I wanted to nest it under something else, that is also an option. You just click Nest Label Under and then select the parent label. So it lists all of your labels and you can pick whichever one you like. If you want it to just be a parent label, then you could just uncheck it and click Create. So it should automatically update, and I believe it just adds it to your main labels over here on the left, and everything is alphabetical. So it appears at the top because I put Apps Anywhere, which starts with A. The other place to create a label is over here in the settings. So if you click on Settings and then See All Settings, it brings you to that page with all the tabs. And we have labels as our second tab. I'm going to zoom out a little bit just so we can see the whole page. So at the top, we have system labels, which are your standard inbox, starred, important, sent, all of those fun things. If you keep scrolling, we have the categories that we mentioned at the inbox type. Those are all here as well. And then we have our created labels all the way at the bottom. So I have all my labels. I can see how many conversations or emails are assigned to each one. I can see, options to remove it or edit it if I want to. I can show them in my list or hide them. You can do a lot of things with your labels. You can also rename them immediately from here. You could just click on the name and just retype it to something else. And if you want to create a new one, you just click Create New Label, and it gives you that same set of fields. So you can enter your name, and then if you want to nest it under something, you just check the box and select the parent label. So in here, the settings side of the labels area, it's important to kind of keep this area in mind because it's where you can manage your labels. So manage in the sense that, we're deciding which ones we want to put over in the list, which is over here, our label list. So whenever you see Show in Label List, it's referring to this list right here. So that's everything above this little More dropdown. Everything above that is shown in my label list. It doesn't mean that they're completely gone, because if you click the More menu, you'll see all of them. So they're not gone forever, they're just hidden from your most used. So it's kind of easier to digest, easier for me at least, to organize when there are less for me to look at. You can also just completely hide them. So if I wanted to hide my Apps Anywhere one, it's gone, except it's not. If you click on the More menu, it's just down here. I just hid it because it wasn't relevant. And if I click Show, it appears back at the top again. A nifty little trick here is the Show If Unread area, and that actually just shows the label up here if there's an unread email in it, which is especially useful if you're going to create a filter that sends emails of a certain kind to a certain label. So then you can see over here on the left, if there's a bolded label, that means that there is something unread in there. So if you want that label to only show if there's something unread in there, there is that option. And that's especially useful if you use filters to just kind of send those emails directly into a label. But otherwise, you could just click Show and it appears there anyway. For message list, I could be wrong because I've seen a couple different conflicting things, and I could just Google it, but I just haven't had the time. But Show in message list, as I understand it, is the list when you're looking at an email and you want to label an email from there. So if you're labeling an email from within an email, the listing of labels that you get to choose from is what this is referring to. And what I mean by all of that is that if I were to click on this email right here and click on the little label tab icon at the top, this is my message list. At least that's what I believe. I could be completely wrong, but this is just a list of labels. All of them are here, no matter if I have them below the More menu or above, they're all right here. So I'm pretty sure that's what that refers to, but could be wrong. If I return to my settings, labels. If I return to my settings, like I said, you can remove any of your labels. And if you remove a label, it does not remove those conversations. So I have 37 conversations in Brightspace, and if I click remove, it just removes the label, but it keeps the conversations in your all mail area. So if you use archiving instead of deleting, because that is an option you can do, archiving just puts it in your all mail and takes it out of your inbox. So they still exist. You can still search for those emails. They just don't have that label if you remove it. And of course, editing is just the same fields you have when you're adding it. You can just choose to make something a child label or make it a parent label at any time. So are there any questions about the created labels so far? And that's okay if not. All right, so before I go on to the filters and all of that fun stuff, we have a couple more things to talk about with labels. Just real quick, I wanted to mention that you can show or hide some of your system labels. So if you wanted to hide your snoozed emails because you don't use that feature, you can hide that. I don't know why I have it shown and never use that feature. I can keep my starred emails here. We can hide the important ones or show them. So if I wanted to see all emails that are marked important, I can do that right from here, but I don't usually do that. I hide all of the chats. I can see my sent emails, which I think is important. I have my scheduled section over here on show if unread. So when we created a scheduled email before, it only appeared over here when I created a scheduled email. So that's kind of how I like to do it because I don't always schedule emails. But if you want to see it all the time, you can just click show and it'll be over here at the top for easy access. Same with drafts and all mail. I feel like I should keep up here because I look at it all the time. I archive everything. And then spam, I also have on hide just because I don't always want to look at my spam. But if you want to review it frequently, show if unread is a good option. I apparently have 26. Should probably look at those and make sure that they're not legitimate. And then trash, of course, is here too. And the categories I mentioned before, they're just the tabs at the top of the inbox if you choose to use them. I have them all hidden because I don't feel like labeling the emails appropriately. I feel like I can just click and drag them to the different tabs if I want to, but they're here as well if you feel like showing or hiding them and toggling that option. So the next cool thing about labels is something I do, and you can tell that I do from the side menu here, is color coding them. So when you color code a label, it just kind of puts a nice little label color right in front of it. But also when you label an email, it puts that color on the email as well. So it's kind of easy to notice that. So if you want to assign a color to a label, you just have to hover over your label and click on the kebab menu, so those three dots, and click label color. And it gives you some preset options, and you can click whatever one you like. So it doesn't look like I have a purple. It kind of does look like I have a purple, so maybe I won't do purple. But you can add a custom color as well, and that lets you pick the background color and also the text color. So if you really want to make it funky, you can. And then you just click apply when you're ready, and you get your new label color over here on the left. So if I wanted to assign any of these labels to any emails, I could do it in two ways, or three ways actually. You can click and drag an email directly to a label and just release it, or you can check the box next to one and click on the label icon at the top, and then click the box next to one of your labels and apply it. So now you can see my label text is right there in front, so I know that it's in my inbox and also in Apps Anywhere. And if you ever want to change the labels or add more or remove them, you can just check that box again, click on the labels, and then uncheck or recheck anything. So you really could go with as many labels as you like, whatever is helpful. And it appears in all of those areas. So if I clicked 4 different labels, it's going to appear in all of those labels when I click on it. So it's kind of useful if it applies to different areas of your email. Another option too is to move the email to a specific label. So if you no longer want it in the inbox, you just click move to and select the label and it sends it off. The only thing about this is that you can only send it to one place. So if you want to apply multiple labels to it, you can just do that from the label as menu. And the other option is just clicking in on the email, and you still get the same 2 options, move to and labels. So I can put miscellaneous on this, apply it, and it shows up over here. When you click into an email, you can choose to remove the labels from here instead of clicking on the menu. So you can just X out of them if you want to remove a label from an email. So it's pretty simple. I usually just click and drag to wherever I need it because this is too many clicks for me. But if it's good for you, then totally use it. It's definitely going to work. Are there any questions about labels or anything like that? Are we doing okay? We only have one more thing to talk about, so we're making great time. All right, so last things last, we are going to talk about filters. So filters are just a way of pre-organizing your emails and sending them to a specific place or doing something with them as they come in. So it's less work for you. It's less laboring over the organization of your inbox if that's something you like to do. And the way to do it is right here from your search bar. So if you click on this little down arrow to the right of your search bar, you get all of these different search fields. Now, if you add information to just one of these fields, this create filter button will activate. So if I want to say, I want to filter all emails from Catherine Fisney, and maybe her subject has the words like Brightspace in them. So any emails that come from her that say Brightspace, I want to do something with them. I'm not quite sure yet, but I know that anything from her with the word Brightspace in the subject is something I want to filter in a specific way. You can also fill out like the to area if you have your email like on a forwarding address. So like maybe your student emails come to your employee email and you want to say like any emails with my student email in them should go to this place. You can also say for has the words, that applies to, I believe, the subject and the body text. So if you want it to look for any specific word or phrase or sentence even, you can put that in here. You can say doesn't have and include some words. And you can also say like has an attachment. So anything from Catherine Fisney with the word Brightspace in the subject that also has an attachment goes to this place. So you can really get really specific about it. And you can always edit these filters as well. So if you realize that you've made it too broad, you can always go into the filters menu in the settings area, which I will show you, and you can change it, get rid of some details, add some more, and you could really just customize it as you go. So I'm going to create my filter with these 2 fields filled in. I think that's good enough for now. And then it brings up a bunch of behaviors. So some behaviors include skipping the inbox and archiving it. So it just kind of takes it right out of the inbox. I don't think it ever sees the inbox, and it goes right into all mail. Then there's mark as read, which is pretty obvious. You can star it. You can apply a label to it. You can also forward it if you have a forwarding address. You can delete it entirely, never send it to spam. So if you have like one person who's always emailing you, who is, a person, but it keeps getting marked as spam, you can filter their emails to be never mentioned as spam. So that's kind of nice. You can always mark it as important or never mark it as important. You can categorize it if you use those inbox categories. And then you can also apply the filter to matching conversations that you currently have. So all of this applies to incoming emails, but you can also apply it to retroactively apply it to existing emails. So one that someone mentioned on Monday that I thought was really interesting was skipping the inbox and applying the label, whatever it might be. So since I said Brightspace, I'll say it's going to Brightspace. But if you skip the inbox and apply the label, that means it's going straight to the label and it's unread because you haven't clicked on it. It's not in the inbox, so you can't see it. So anything marked with the Brightspace in the subject from Catherine Fisney will skip the inbox and go straight to this label. I can always just mark it as important as well. So I can do a whole bunch of things to it. But I'm going to do these 2 behaviors, and I think that's pretty good. So I'm going to create the filter. So my filter was now created. And if I go up to the settings area and click See All Settings, there's the filters and blocked addresses area. So if you click on that, it opens up the filters and blocked addresses. And at the top, it shows you all the filters you currently have. So maybe you've created one in the past. Maybe you'll see it here. But if not, this should be empty unless you just created one. So we have 3 filters here that are very similar. We have anything from Cat Fisney with Brightspace in the subject. And this is what it does. It skips the inbox and applies the label Brightspace. This top one is from Cat and has the word update anywhere in the email because it doesn't say subject. So it has the word update anywhere in the email. I'm going to star it and categorize it as primary. So it shows up in the primary category of my inbox. So it comes right to the front. And then my last one I have is anything from the workshops account with the subject Brightspace. I just mark it as important. So I'm going to delete that one because it's kind of boring and I never use it. But if I wanted to update one of these, like this top one, it seems a little lackluster compared to the very specific behaviors of the one below. If I click edit, I can just open up that same series of fields and just add whatever I want. So if I need to add some words for the subject, because there are some emails just slipping through that don't need to be, don't have to behave the way I want a specific filter to, I can just include all of these different emails or details. Very similar sounding word. And then if you were to change anything, like I'll add the S for updates, you click continue and you can either keep the same behaviors as you had before or add new ones. And then you just update the filter and it updates right here in your filters area of your settings. And you can create a new filter from here too. It just opens up that same menu from the top and that's pretty much it. It's really not too bad. I don't use them a lot right now. I just kind of have these from when I was setting up this training, but I feel like I might start because it really saves me the effort of having to click and drag emails, which doesn't seem that hard, but it's just time consuming when there's a whole bunch. But does anyone have any questions about any of the stuff we talked about today? All right. Well, if not, I'm going to stop the screen share and also stop the